Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the garden question and answer video that I do most weeks. You can ask gardening questions down below this video, and I will pick from those each week. And I've got 22, 23 or something like that I wrote down from last week. Again, you guys continue to ask great questions. I really appreciate that. Holly decided that the warm house was better for her. She'd been out here with me doing a bunch of stuff in the garden all day. Normally when I grab the camera, she knows that's outside time, but that time she said, nah, just lay here. So she's inside. Let's see. On the Learn to Grow video series that's over on my website, I put up a sun versus shade video on there. I think that will be published and up and before this video is put up, but it's within the realm of possibility. Maybe not quite, but it's just going through the difference between sun and shade, part sun. You know how to go about answering the questions of winter sun versus summer sun, and those kinds of things. So again, I'm trying to put up a video on that channel every week. It may not happen every week, but there's lots of videos to come on that channel, and I think I plan on somewhere around 50-60 hours of content and some written parts as well for that. There's a $50 discount code below this video that's good for 2 more days after you're seeing this video. I think I ran that coupon through January 17th because a couple people again had asked me to extend it a week or 2 ago. So a couple more days on that. I was in Baltimore from Sunday through Thursday at Mance, which is the Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show. It happens every year. There's 2 big nursery shows. There's lots of nursery shows. There's a Gulf State show. This next weekend is Green and Growing, which is in Greensboro, North Carolina, where all the mostly North Carolina nurseries congregate and all the garden centers come, but there's national nurseries there as well. But Mance is the big kickoff one every year. It's the first one. It's like Iowa in voting or something. So then there's one in the summer in Columbus, Ohio, called Cultivate. Those are really the two biggest ones. But I was at Mance from Sunday night through Thursday, doing some stuff with the Southern Living Plant Collection, Encore Azaleas, Sunset Plant Collection. I did a couple videos. You will have seen Buddy Lee's brand new Autumn Moonstruck variegated Encore Azalea video from yesterday. If you haven't watched that yet, it's only about 8 minutes long, and it's that variegated Encore Azalea I've seen for years and years and years. They were really trying to make sure. Sometimes variegated plants can revert, so you really have to look at them longer. Revert, I mean turn back green, or do all kinds of weird variegations, or so you really have to look at them for a long time. So I knew that variegated Encore was coming, but again, it's been looked at for a lot of years just to make sure it was going to be stable in the landscape. So pretty excited about that one. And several other things up there. Saw lots and lots of friends and have content coming in the future because of that. So there you go. And I put up a Hellebore maintenance video. And again, I have a lot of videos shot that haven't gone up. So this next week should be a good week for that. Okay. Questions. I don't know how far into the video. I am a long way into the video and haven't gotten to questions. Here we go. So last week I talked about just from a sustainability, or I don't even like that word all that much, but just from a being conservative with water in the garden. I'm not hooking in my drip irrigation. And then I think maybe some folks took from that I'm not watering at all. I am watering. I'm just watering what needs to be watered rather than. Only thing I'm saying with the drip irrigation is if I was going to water using drip irrigation, I'd have to turn it on onto the driest plant. So if I have one thing that's wilting every day and that's the only way I can irrigate, then I'm watering everything to really water that one plant. And so I am still watering. I'm just watering when something needs water and not watering the things that have been in the ground for 3 or 4 years that are just don't show any signs. But I have said on many videos in the past, when I say something is drought tolerant, that doesn't mean it's going to look its absolute best if you never water it. So there are times where even drought tolerant things, by drought tolerant I mean it will survive the drought. that doesn't mean it will thrive in the drought. So there's that. So occasionally things do need to be watered, even if we're trying to have very drought tolerant plants and use less water. So there's, I just want to make sure that people do know that I am watering. I'm only watering what's dry. Easy peasy, right? And if we go a prolonged period of time without rain, I'm probably going to look at even things that I consider very established and very drought tolerant, just to make sure they're looking good in the landscape, and not just like water me day after day. So somewhere in the middle, right? Okay. I talked about the sod netting last week, and the plastic sod netting. A lot of people commented that it's in their gardens as well. And so a couple people said it's coming to the top. I don't think it's coming to the top. I think your soil is eroding. There's almost no place, very few places I see that have turf where it's mowed pretty low. There's always soil erosion going on. People are like, oh, the roots are coming to the surface. No, your soil is disappearing. The roots are coming to the surface a little bit, but partly also your soil's disappearing. So if you're seeing that sod netting up at the top, it might be coming up a bit, but I bet you're also losing topsoil. You may want to consider mowing your grass a little higher and trying to prevent some erosion. If you're seeing that, my guess is it might be mowed too low, or maybe it's on a slope and you're losing soil. Okay, just throwing that out there. Somebody asked me about pine straw versus hardwood mulch for water retention. They're in the sandhills of North Carolina, and for those of you who don't know, I'm in the Piedmont area, the eastern part of the Piedmont. The Piedmont is mostly clay soils, runs from Virginia down through the southeast, and we have mostly clay-based soils here. And then very quickly around Interstate 95, it's almost like they built Interstate 95 through the state of North Carolina, dividing the sandhills from the Piedmont, and that area going toward the coast gets sandier and sandier and sandier. Definitely hardwood mulch is better at retaining moisture than pine straw. I almost use pine straw for the soil to kind of breathe some, to keep it from being too wet, which I've talked about rotating pine straw into my hardwood mulch sometimes, just to let it dry out and break down a little quicker. But definitely hardwood mulch if you're going for water retention, or wood chips or anything that will, pine straw just covers the ground like this, whereas, the other mulches will cover it solid like that. So, okay. Let's see, somebody has a Hydrangea Paniculata. I think it was Little Lime or something. It doesn't really matter which one it is. Any Hydrangea Paniculata. They're the full sun hydrangeas that we all know from Limelight, and I've shown White Wedding, and I've got one called Moon Dance, and there'll be 75 new ones this year because we just can't have enough Hydrangea Paniculatas. And I say that I say that because literally there are 5 new ones every year. I don't know where the end of and they're not different enough now. We've gotten White Wedding and Moon Dance have very sturdy stems. They hold the flowers up big and tall. I feel like they need to be very different now to introduce them. We're seeing flower color in them, the pinks and that kind of thing. But I would like to see more differentiation before somebody releases one. Just to be releasing one to release one seems, anyway, whatever. They want to tree form it, and I got that video tree forming this Hydrangea Paniculata over here where I've been working on it, but they decided to put it in a pot, limb it up, and they have the pot in the house and wanted to know if it could stay in the house. No, it'll wake up in all likelihood in the warmth of the house. So put it outside on days when you can. Just don't, if you're just trying to keep the pot from freezing solid and staying frozen solid. But Hydrangea Paniculatas are hardy to like zone 4. So I don't know where this person was. They didn't put their zone number, but I mean, keep in mind, Hydrangea Paniculatas are unlikely to die from cold in a container if you were in zone 7 or 8 or 9. But I mean, most everybody watching can grow Hydrangea Paniculatas. But if you have it in the house, it might wake up, and then it might, it needs to come outside. Okay, let's see. Somebody's in Georgia, and they're looking for a 7-foot tall or larger oak. Wanted to know about how going about finding that. What you would want to do is just Google nurseries in your state and see if you can find anybody that does larger container materials. So like balled and burlapped, meaning that field grown material, or pot and pot, which is like 25-gallon containers that are actually put down into the ground. And you need to call one of them and ask them a landscaper's name who buys from them frequently. That's probably your best bet. Sometimes it's to actually end around and call the nursery. Like here in Raleigh, Taylor's Nursery grows field-grown trees, and I would call them and just say, hey, is there a landscaper you would recommend to me to plant one of your big giant trees that you grow? Same thing with, Adcox and Fuquay Varina grows large container trees. They deal with a lot of landscapers. They know the good ones from the bad ones, I'm sure, or the good ones from the average ones, let's say that, and could probably recommend you somebody. McLamb's Nursery south of Raleigh. So there's probably some around you as well in your Georgia area. Call a wholesale grower and just ask, is there a landscaper you'd recommend? I'm sure they, like I say, I'm sure they know the good ones. I certainly did. I called some of my landscapers that bought plants from me landscapers in training. They were asking me questions when they came in, learning. They were trying to learn. And then I had guys that came in that, they've been doing it a long time. Those probably the ones I would recommend for, skilled jobs. Okay, or knowing where things are. Experience also is knowing where things are. That's part of as much about being a landscaper as anything, is knowing where to acquire materials efficiently and for a price that allows you to, save your customer a little bit of money too. Okay, somebody used hay for mulch, and now of course it's all come up. There is a difference between hay and straw. So you want to use, when you go and buy straw for your grass, when you're overseeding your lawn, those bales of straw should not have the seed heads in them, okay, so that the seed isn't coming up. You'll always get a little here or there that'll come up. It's usually something like winter rye, but if you're using hay is for horses, and it has the seed heads in it of whatever it is. I mean, it could be a winter wheat. There's lots of different types of grasses that are used for hays and straws. So, but a hay is typically going to have the seed heads in it, and then they thought they're in Oklahoma and thought it would go away during the winter. Those are winter grasses typically. Oklahoma's a little cold though, but certainly here in North Carolina, those things, they grow faster in the late fall and in the very, very early spring than any other time of the year. And then they burn out during the summer. So I'm assuming your Oklahoma heat will kill some of it as time goes on. Don't know what to tell you other than that. Most of those winter, annual, or even perennial grasses are probably not going to be heat tolerant in your Oklahoma heat. That's not to say some of it won't make it through, but that's likely. But yeah, definitely you want to use straw that's been basically the seed head's been decapitated off of it before it got baled up. Okay, somebody asked me my favorite garden color, and I think this is a great question because if I was going to go and just look at colors and go, ooh, what I like that color, I might pick purples or reds, darker colors. And then when you get them out in your garden, you really can't see them all that well. Look how dark this purple foliage plant is back here that I'm not going to say the name of because I say it too much. That purple is really, really dark behind me, whereas that chartreuse color of that sunshine ligustrum, Laura Petalum, you see how bright that is in a kind of a late afternoon shady situation. That one is bright. So when I'm thinking about garden colors, I'm thinking about yellows and whites and pinks, and they tend to show up a little better, especially if you're using dark green or purple backdrops to them. They really, really pop. And so maybe my favorite color is purple, if I'm just looking at the flowers, if you were gonna pick flowers. But in the garden, I really do think that brighter, more vivid colors show up, especially with a green backdrop. Okay, so somebody has a bare root peach tree, and they're in Georgia, which is the peach state. and want to container plant it for now. And would it be okay outside container planted? Yes. In the background of the Hellebore pruning video, that peach that I dug up in the front garden is in that pot in that video, and it's been in that pot. I didn't think about it when it got cold. It's been in that pot for 2 winters. It has yet to be protected either one of those winters. I think this year it's finally going to come out and look reasonably good, and it may go into the landscape. I didn't think about that thing at all. It stayed frozen probably back there for 3 days. It won't affect it at all. There's a limit to that. You know, I say it's tough as nails, 5 degrees in that pot, probably fine. It can't stay frozen for like a month straight. So, you know, within reason, I doubt you'll have anything like that going forward in the state of Georgia. So if a minor freeze won't hurt it. Okay, unless it was already out blooming and leaves were coming on it, that would be different. You'd need to bring it in the house. I feel like I need to come back sometimes and say, additional information, if it's waking up, it needs to go in the house, probably if it's going to be below freezing. Just on those nights, and then back out as soon as you can. Okay, so somebody has, let's see, cedar apple rust, and I get so many cedar apple rust questions, but one of the fungicides that's recommended for it is Captan, and wanted to know just in general about spraying Captan. I don't like to get any kind of pattern where I'm going to have to spray over and over and over again, but if I'm spraying something, generally speaking, fungicides are usually more environmentally friendly than are herbicides, potentially. Not all herbicides are alike though. Some herbicides break down really quickly. You know, their half-life, or the amount of time it takes for them to break down and be basically gone in the environment, is very different insecticide to insecticide. But, you know, there are insecticides that hang around for a long time. Also, we worry about the movement they have through the soil, so that they don't break down very quickly. Some can drop through the soil. That's one of those tests they use to figure out, you know, they'll dig down 12, 18 inches, 24 inches and see if this herbicide is showing up deep down in the ground. Same thing with insecticides. Fungicides, obviously insecticides, you know, most are going to be non-selective. There are systemic insecticides which go inside the plant, and only the things that are chewing on the plant get affected. Some of those have been proven to still harm other insects in other ways from the flowers themselves. But so insecticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, generally speaking, the least concerning if you're going to spray something. Captan has we have a lot of data on this one because it's been around a long time, and you can look up the EPA's, rewritten, their stuff. You can look up things from, .edu websites where you can, look and see information on an insecticide or fungicide or whatever. It's been around for a long time. Not encouraging anyone to use them, not encouraging anyone to not use them. It's your choice. But I use nothing in this garden. But again, fungicides tend to be less toxic. Captan breaks down very quickly. It's shown to not harm birds, and it's been fed to ducks. I mean, who feeds this stuff to ducks? So that's what we have to do in this release one. There's something like fed to birds, and it just made them eat a little less. I mean, like full on fed to them. It does harm aquatic animals, so don't spray it near a creek or river or stream or anything like that. If you're going to spray it, again, I'm not going to. I'm probably going to pull. I'm probably just not going to, and I'm probably just not going to have apple trees if this is what it takes. But again, I'm just saying that fungicides, slightly less to worry about, and Captan happens to be one that's been around for long enough that we have actual data on that it causes very few issues in the environment and breaks down very, very quickly in the sunlight. So that's all. Again, not me. Make sure I say that. Okay. So somebody used, they've put down compost and they've put down hardwood mulch, or they put down wood chips, and waiting for this stuff to break down. They did it sometime in 2022, and they're waiting for it to break down. They pulled some of it back, and they've got potworms, which are these white worms. If you've ever seen them, they're like super cool looking. They're white worms. There's actually that group of worms. There's that are white like that. There's a lot of different species of them, and one of them we call potworms is in high organic material areas like what you're talking about, where you've put down compost and they're above the ground. They're doing you a favor. They're out there just like any other worm, breaking that stuff down, making those nutrients available, getting that soil ready for you. It's not a worry. They just like to be in high organic material, and that's what you did. You put out a lot of organic material. Now things are showing up to help break it down and get it ready for your plants. Great. Cool thing is there's also a few other of those that in that same group. There are marine potworms as well, or marine worms as well. And there's there's ones that only live in glaciers, and if they get above freezing, they die. That kind cool, really cool group of worms. I love that kind of thing. But yeah, potworms. If you don't know what they are, they're white when you pull them up, but they're there helping you. Okay, no problem at all. Let's see. They probably need a little bit more moisture than some other worms, and so that area may be holding a bit of water because it's been wetter longer. But these things will come and go as they're needed. You may find that you don't have a lot of worms in your garden because you just don't have a lot of stuff for them to be breaking down at any given time. But that can ebb and flow based on how much organic material you're adding. Okay, and how dry it is at any given time, because all of those types of creatures have to go lower areas. That's why you see all the dead worms on your sidewalks and driveways and things when it's really, really dry. They're trying to find a wetter space, and then sometimes you'll see them when it's really, really wet, trying to bail, get to higher ground because they're drowning. The opposite happens. Okay, somebody asked about cutting other roots while they're planting, if they got other perennials near it. So you just have to do what you have to do. Everything in this garden now, I'm going to be cutting roots while I'm planting something, so it is what it is. Most things were completely tolerant of it if they've been in the ground for any length of time, especially if you're doing it in the fall or winter or early spring when they're not actively growing and they're not using those roots anyway. I will say that there are diseases that can enter through roots, and so, is it within the realm of possibility that you could cut a root on something and then you end up with nematodes or canker or some soil-borne thing in that thing next to it? Yes, certainly. If the plant's in good shape, it's probably going to be able to fight those kinds of things off. But everyone that's gardening is cutting the roots of the other plants near them, and we just do what we do. And I don't really worry about it or think about it. You got to make space for new and better. Is there potential downside? Yes, but again, keep your garden vigorous and happy and mulched and all the things we talk about on the channel, and they should be able to fight off any of those things. Okay, somebody asked me if I had any experience with electric mower. I have, and I use all kinds of electric. I don't use a weed eater much, but I have an electric weed eater and lots of electric tools, electric drills, all those kinds of things. It was funny. I put up that checklist, that yearly garden checklist last week, and one of the comments was get a battery powered lawnmower. Well, I was like, I'm not going to throw that lawnmower away. But if I was going to buy a lawnmower today, I'd definitely buy a battery powered one or a rechargeable one, because I only have this little lawn space and that little lawn space, and it's certainly easier than going and getting gas and all those kinds of things. So I would definitely have one now, but I'm not going to throw the one away I have in the meantime, which I've had for a long time, and doing maintenance on it has kept it in great shape for a very, very long time. I hope to keep it another 10 years without having to think about this, but if I was going to go buy one today, it would be an electric mower. Okay, let's see. Somebody suggested that I do some sort of checklist. When I do these monthly checklists, that there be some sort of written piece to it that they could purchase or whatever. That is going to be part of the Learn to Grow video series that I've been talking about for the last few weeks. There are going to be written components to those videos as well. Different types of lists like this, you know, where it's in a written format. Okay, so somebody has, this is pretty funny actually. Not funny, but my answer is going to start off funny. Prepare yourself for this great humor. So their neighbors planted cannas along the fence, and now those cannas are coming under and invading the yard, and this gentleman wanted to know how to get rid of them. I would say you should make a lot of noise, and this might make them sell, okay? That would be the best way to probably get rid of them. Just make all kinds of noise. Maybe get a cannon. I don't know. I don't know how. I really don't know how to get rid of them. And then I realized he was talking about the cannas. Okay, he's not actually talking about the neighbors. I don't think you're going to have to cut them down and cut pretty deep. You'd have to put some sort of barrier at the base of the fence to keep them from coming over. Cannas can root pretty deep and come up, so you would almost need some sort of concrete barrier, some sort of mesh barrier where you'd have to cut a trench through there, and then lay something in there to prevent the roots from coming over to your side. Would be the only way you could stop it from happening. But again, it might be easier to run the neighbors off than to run canna lilies off. They are a pain once they get going. Not one of my favorite plants either. I just rarely see cannas where I go, yeah, you know, I love them. That's why they're really none here. I know a lot of people do like them, and they're bright and showy. Like I was talking about bright and showy colors. A lot of them are bright and showy. So I get that, but they come with lots of problems, including, you know, being a bit of a bully. Let's see. So somebody asked about something smaller than a Yoshino cryptomeria, because Yoshino cryptomerias get 100 feet tall and really wide, and people buy them as screening plants. And where I'm standing, there's not enough room between me and the camera to put a Yoshino cryptomeria from that fence to, you know, the camera, if I actually gave it real space. And a couple people answered Radicans, cryptomeria, and Chapel Hill cryptomeria, and there's actually quite a few that will stay smaller. And when I say stay smaller, I actually mean slower growing, because all of these conifers just continue to grow. So a dwarf conifer is typically just a slower growing plant. It still will get quite large, but maybe in the period of time you're going to be in that house, it won't outgrow the space if you start with a slower growing one. Okay, somebody they got their oak tree stump ground and wanted to know if they can use that mulch in their tulip bed. Yeah, I mean, this is just wood chips, basically. I wouldn't put it over there when the tulips are about to come up. I've talked about this before. People talk about using this wood material stealing nitrogen in order to break down, and it can steal it from your plants. And I've said it's overblown, but if you just take handfuls of wood chips and throw them into your tulip bed, it might do enough to those tulips that they don't perform quite as well as they would otherwise. So for me, I'm going to let the tulips come up. I'm going to let them bloom, show off. And after they fade back, I'm going to spread that material across that bed. That's probably the way I would approach it. In the meantime, just leave it in that pile, breaking down a bit on their own. But I would use it post tulip season rather than peak tulip season. Again, wood requires the nitrogen to break down, but after it does, it re-releases the nitrogen. It's really, again, it's kind of one of those overblown things, but it's real enough that you know, I don't want to take away anything from your tulip show in the next few weeks. Okay, so somebody wanted to know daylily pruning time. You can prune them. See, so some daylilies just kind of become mush, you know, right out of the gate. First freeze, they just absolutely go to mush, and you can clean them up then if you want to, or wait until right before the new growth starts. And then we have some daylilies that are evergreen or semi-evergreen, depending on where you live. And again, anytime late fall through the time that they're about to break dormancy in the spring is probably fine on daylilies. I don't think you're going to hurt them. You just leave, you know, an inch or two above the ground. But you want to get them before that new growth starts. Like a lot of grasses, you really want to, any kind of grass-like plant, daylily is not grass, but any kind of grass-like plant like that, you want to get them before that new growth starts coming up. a few more for this week. Let's see. Somebody had hellebores in a container, and they became absolutely mush when the cold came through. In all likelihood, the foliage is going to come back on them. Whether they'll have as many flowers this year, I don't really know. Hellebores are, considered hardy. Some is zone 4 through 9, some 5 through 9, certainly 4 through 8. Maybe on some that may not be as heat tolerant. So they're extremely cold hardy, but if you look at them across that range, here in my area, I showed cutting back hellebores, and I'm saying the foliage is tattered, but it still looks pretty decent, right, in 7B or 8A. By the time you go up to zone 5, they basically, the foliage kind of dies back on its own, without, you'll go clean them up a little, but you won't have anywhere near the amount of leaves that I showed in that video. So they come back from that, no problem. That cold was a particularly strange event, in the way the temperature fell so quickly. It has really caused a lot of damage. But if you look at the low temperatures that occurred during those, people are saying, we got all the way down to 4 degrees. Well, you're in West Tennessee. It gets down to 4 degrees. That's not what turns your, that's not the reason, all your leafy evergreen shrubs are black. It's really because the wind, cut across them in the way it happened. Okay, let's see. So somebody said, is it worth getting red tip photinias? I've talked about red tip photinias before. They were basically every house in Raleigh, and a lot of the Southeast had red tip photinia hedges surrounding their gardens, and then they got a leaf spot disease, and it literally just killed them. I mean, it went from, we see these kind of leaf spot disease issues, on plants that, can make them look bad, but typically doesn't kill them. I think this plant was overplanted to the point where it just spread and spread and spread and just started killing them or making them look so bad that they might as well go. I have not found a really resistant leaf spot variety, and I tried a couple that people told me about in the nursery business. Over the 20 years or so I had the nursery over there, I tried a few. Somebody said, I've never seen any leaf spot in this one. So I did cuttings for a while, and it didn't take it long to show up. So I still haven't seen one. That's Photinia fraseri. There's Photinia ceratifolia, which is a serrated leaf variety, but it's invasive. I mean, I see it all over the place. It somehow got mixed in with fraseri. It's an attractive plant, but I wouldn't use it as a replacement. But again, I don't think so. I don't think I'd want to put something in that I'm relying on as a screening tool between me and a neighbor, to end up with an issue, even if it's clean in the container at that time. Somebody may say down below that they've had a variety or named cultivar or something that they haven't seen any leaf spot in. If you do, if you have seen that, let me know. But I tried a few, and we're overhead irrigating them in the nursery business, so I'm really exposing them to, the leaves being wet a lot, and they just didn't hold up under that. Okay. And then, somebody asked, last question for this week, somebody asked about gardening on a tight budget. I think I spent, some time on that last year, just showing, that I'm how many things I'm doing from seed here. I'm only fertilizing once a year. I really think you can mulch with leaves just as well as you can mulch with anything else. We're just talking about putting organic material down on the ground. That can be pine straw, leaves, hardwood mulch, fancy bagged, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's definitely ways. I would encourage you, if you're on Facebook, which, in my opinion, of Facebook at this point, just in the way it's I feel like it's made everybody butt heads on so many things. I see, I'll be on Facebook for like 5 minutes occasionally, and I'll see some sort of video that's kind of cute or humorous or something like that. And then you look at the comments down at the bottom of it, and 5 people have just been, how mean can I be today to someone? It's just, that's the environment. It feels like, anyway. So I'm not on there, but there are Facebook groups that, where it might be a native plant group that's local to you, or it might be a seed exchange group. That's one of the things on Facebook. It's one of the things Facebook should be great at. So I would encourage you to find groups in your area that maybe exchange plants, exchange seeds. You know, you might, you know, make friends, you know, in one of those groups, and they have a hosta that they can pop out of the ground and divide for you, and you've got something in your garden that you can make a, you know, divide out for them, and you can swap and trade, and, you know, all the things that, you know, that can make it quite a bit less expensive. And that's the way people used to garden, right? I mean, you know, people traded, and, you know, they didn't go put, you know, and then save your money in the garden for, you know, what I always consider these, you know, the big purchases, you know, Japanese maple or a weeping tree or some sort of contorted conifer or something really, you know, really cool. And then a lot of the other stuff you can, you know, you can get by on a budget. And I try to show that in February. Steph and I have really planned out a lot of content, and almost all of it again this next year. Again, we'll try to do it as least expensive as we possibly can. So it will be things from seed, things we've collected from seed here, seeds from friends, some seed we've bought. And again, I'll talk about there's expensive places to buy seed and some less so. Unfortunately, freight's gotten high, you know, on everything. But yes, you can definitely garden on a budget and still have a great garden. So thank you guys very much for watching, following along with the channel. Again, great questions every week, and you can ask questions down below this video. Thanks.